What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Monday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. If you are not on the East Coast or Easter than the East Coast, that's not even a word, but it is morning for you guys, but we're here noon on a Monday just because both our schedules are a little wonky today. This was the only time we can make it work. And despite it being a 5-game slate, we did not want to cancel because that's not how we roll. But got a nice little 5-gamer here, and joining me to break it down, Slim Cliffy, what's going on?
Not a whole lot, man. Nice little 5-game slate here tonight. We have some key players injured. We have some key players returning. Few interesting. I'll call them interesting matchups. Because there are what look to be lopsided games, and then there's a late night hammer of all late night hammers that we'll get to. But I really do like this 5-gamer here tonight because obviously there's chalky spots. There's always going to be chalky spots on a 5-game slate like this. But even the chalky spots have, we'll get to the top stacks tool, but even the chalky spots have pretty high top 2 stack percentages. So I feel like you can play the chalk tonight or you can just avoid the chalk, but we're certainly going to talk about that as we get through these 5 games.
Yeah, for sure. I actually like this slate. Don't have to deal with Matthews, don't have to deal with McKinnon. McDavid's back in a really good spot, but we'll talk about it.
We can talk about Will Borgen signing a $21 million contract and then giving the puck away with 20 seconds left to lose the game.
Yeah, definitely didn't see the guy coming out at him. Lehkonen definitely loves to score some big goals. I don't mind the AAV on that contract. I thought 5 years was a little steep, but
it just felt like one of those things. It's like you could probably sign a similar contract 6 weeks from now. You only traded for him a month ago or whatever it was, a little over a month ago. I felt like you could probably hold off a little bit, but they did what they did. Watch that game. That was a really fun game to watch. And then I caught Vegas, Florida last night, double screening that in the football game. So a couple good games yesterday. Florida they didn't look bad, but they're in kind of a funk right now. They're not on the slate. We do have 10 teams here tonight. And honestly, probably at least 9 playable teams, 8 for single entry, I guess. But we'll get through those one by one.
Yeah. And just one last quick note on the Avs. Could you imagine going from 17 minutes a night next to Jesperi Kotkaniemi to 21 minutes a night with Nathan McKinnon?
He played 25 minutes in that first game against Boston. He got traded at 7 o'clock Eastern or something like that. And 18 hours later, he's playing 25 minutes on the road for Colorado. That's a pretty wild change for him, but he looked good. I watched both. Well, I didn't watch all of the Boston game. I only caught the third period, but watched the game yesterday. Obviously, he's looked good from what I saw.
Yeah, if you look at the NHL Edge statistical stuff, which is very interesting, I use it a lot. If you look at speed bursts over 21 miles an hour, which is how they track speed bursts, right? McKinnon's number 1 in the league at speed bursts over 21 miles an hour. Netchus is 3rd. That's going to be a ridiculously fast line. So,
yeah.
But yeah. Let's get into the slate. Before we do, I see almost 100 of you joining us a couple hours early. We do really appreciate it, hanging out with us on this Monday early afternoon. It's a little later in Cliffy land, but, that's what happens when you live in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. If you do want to go premium, you can click the link in the chat and use promo code Stochastic15. That'll get you 15% off your first week or month subscription. We have a nice UFC card this weekend. They're in Saudi Arabia, so it's going to start at a reasonable time so you don't have to stay up till 1 a.m. to watch the main event. Obviously no NFL this week. There is a big NHL DPP tomorrow on DraftKings. the Spinorama. So if you do want to go premium, click that link. It'll get you access to all the tools that we have. First game of the night, we have the Los Angeles Kings with a 2.9 total heading into Detroit. The Wings have a 2.5. Looks like JT Comfort is out for the Wings. Vladimir Tarasenko is questionable for tonight. The coach said it's unlikely that he plays. So we'll have to see who moves up into his spot and takes his spot on the top power play. It could be Bergen, could be Casper. I don't know. This isn't a slate where I'm really, gung-ho about the Wings here. Going up against the Kings is not great. It's probably going to be Darcy Kemper in net. The one thing I will say is that despite the Kings being one of the best 5-on-5 teams in the NHL, you can kind of get there against them on the power play, but a lot of that was goalie related. And, the Wings do have a good power play, but they're missing Patty Kane, and now they're going to be missing Tarasenko. So if you're going to put in, Jonathan Bergen or Joe Veleno or Andrew Kopp or Marco Casper to an already depleted power play without Kane and Tarasenko, I don't think I will prioritize the Wings here, especially you're not getting a tremendous ownership discount on that top line. They're coming in at 7.5% projected. And it's one of the worst 5-on-5 matchups you can have. So it's not like they're going to be 1-2% on the slate, especially at 15.5, right? There are lines in that area in better matchups that I prefer, like the Celebrini line we'll talk about later. It's only $700 more. The Travis Konechny line, although Torts might torts it up tonight, $900 more. The Blues Shen line, exact same price as the Larkin line. So the Kings top line on the other side is $300 cheaper. So there's a lot of lines in that range that I prefer. So it's really hard to prioritize the Wings here tonight. If you happen to get some of that top line in MME, fine, because it's a 5-game slate. You don't really want to X anyone out. That's fine, but I'm pretty much out on the Wings here tonight. My interest is on the Kings side. And funny enough, this is a very good power play spot for the Kings, but the Kings power play is bad. It's really bad. It's honestly one of the worst in the league. They moved what's his face back to the top, Brian Clark, right? Took Spence off and put Clark on, or am I making that up? I feel like I'm making that up.
Against Columbus, it was still Jordan Spence.
Okay, so whether it's Spence, whether it's Clark, I think LaFerriere being back, I think eventually he's going to take Byfield's spot on the top power play unit. That may help. Again, I'm not going to power play stack the Kings here tonight because it is still a good 5-on-5 matchup, and they have playable 5-on-5 lines. I think if you want to play Kempe, Kopitar, Turcotte here at 15-2, they're coming in less owned here than Detroit won, and it's a much better 5-on-5 matchup for that Kings top line. So, I think Kings 1 is definitely in play here. Again, I'm going to defer to Fiala, LaFerriere, Deneau. They've played excellent together in a 200-minute sample. That second line, the second and third lines for the Wings are pretty bad. Once you get past Cedar, their defensive pairings are pretty bad. Cam Talbot's actually had a decent season considering what's in front of them. But, from a 5-on-5 standpoint, I think playing Fiala, LaFerriere, Deneau, or Fogle, Byfield more is definitely in play here. If you do want to get more expensive, I think going to LA 1 is certainly feasible. So while I think there's 3 playable lines on the Kings, I don't particularly love Detroit 1. It's a tough 5-on-5 matchup, and they're over-owned for, their matchup.
Yeah, I'll start on the Detroit side. I'm not a huge fan of Detroit here in general for the reason that you outlined, is that not only is it a bad 5-on-5 spot, but it's a pretty bad power play spot. The Kings power play kind of struggled for the first month of the season. A lot of it was save percentage plus penalty taking problems. Those problems those really haven't been problems for the Kings for a while now. When they're on the PK, over their last 25 games, when they're down a man, they're top 10 by shot attempts against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. They're top 10 or 8th by goals against at 4-on-5. And they don't take a lot of penalties. So like if Detroit only gets a couple power plays and they're facing a top 10 penalty kill and they still don't have Patrick Kane, like I do worry about, them being, anybody can score on the power play on any given night. Like that's just kind of the way hockey works. But if I were to bank on it, I wouldn't think that Detroit gets there on the power play. So like if I do anything, it would be just stacking an even strength line. I think it would probably be Detroit 1, Larkin, Raymond, Casper, for the sole reason that they've actually been pretty good. Under McClellan, 74 shot attempts, 3.5 expected goals, 3.3 actual goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. I don't think Casper joins the top power play unit. While you were talking, I was looking at power plays they've ran this season. Now, they have used Berggren before, but the guy that stuck out was Michael Rasmussen.
Oh, yeah.
So Rasmussen might jump up. But again, it's not a good power play spot, so I'm not that concerned about it. And that Detroit top line has legit been good. And, we talked about Casper on the show before. His value has been more defensive than offensive. He still has 17 shots in his last 10 games. It's not great, but it's not like he's, not generating any offense. He's, he scored some goals. His shooting percentage is a little bit out of whack, but like they're a good line. They're just in a very bad spot. So that's why, like, if I was 20 maxing, so obviously you mentioned MME, like I would have a little interest in Detroit, but generally speaking, my interest is on the Los Angeles side. And you're right, like they do have 3 playable lines. I will say that that Larkin, Raymond, Casper line has generally been pretty good defensively. And assuming Cam Talbot gets to start tonight, and he's probably going to get to start tonight, we saw it the other night against Tampa Bay when he shut them out. Like he's been a pretty good goalie for Detroit this season. I have no problems playing Los Angeles here tonight. The top line is fine. I would prefer Los Angeles 1 to Detroit 1. I agree with you there. I think I would probably rather go to the depth here for the Kings because, especially if JT Compher's out, like once you get past that Larkin, Raymond, Casper line, you're looking at Joe Veleno and Andrew Kopp and Jonathan Berggren, and there's just not a whole lot there. Fiala, Laferriere, no, have been great this season together. 68 shot attempts, 3.5 expected goals, 3 actual goals per 60 minutes. When Laferriere returned, he's not on the top power play, but he still skated over 17 minutes, so he got good ice time. Kevin Fiala, over 3 shots per game across his last 25 games, so he's been getting pretty involved. A big problem for Fiala this season was assists. His line mates just aren't finishing, and Laferriere is one of the few line mates who has been finishing. So I think getting him back really helps out Fiala's upside here. They lead the Kings by top 2 stack percentage at 7.6%. It is a good power play spot. You only get Fiala on the top power play. But like you said, the Kings power plays is just terrible. So like, if Detroit has a good penalty killing night, I think this is one of those situations where they could do it. So I think it's more about the 5-on-5, like get some depth matchups. Like Fiala will probably play around 20 minutes, 19 to 20 minutes. Danault will probably be around 18, 19, Laferriere 17 plus. Like these guys get good ice time, even though they're listed as a third line. So Fiala, Laferriere, Danault for me, coming around 10% ownership, I think is perfectly fine. They're a sub 14K line I like here tonight. I think all 3 Kings lines are definitely in play, but it's that Danault line that I like best in this game, period.
And they had a really good game against Columbus. Danault had a goal and assist. Fiala had 2 assists. Laferriere scored. And they gave Columbus so much time to challenge that. And then they found that someone was like a hair offsides.
Like 30 seconds earlier, too, or something like that.
21 seconds before the play. It's just like, what? I don't mean to like rag about offsides challenges, but like it doesn't matter what side you're on offside challenges. They need to figure out something. Like it should be I don't mean to spend too much time on it. You know how they kind of do it in the NFL in the 2-minute? Like if there's a play that needs to be reviewed, they'll buzz the official. That's what they should do. Forget coaches' challenge on the offsides. If the refs miss it and it's blatant enough that Toronto's like, hey, by the way, you should look at this, buzz them down and go check it out. But anyway, I'm not complaining. That was definitely complaining, but I'll say I'm not complaining. New Jersey Devils with a 3 total heading into Philadelphia. Watch out for the greased poles. The Flyers have a 2.6 total. I'll be honest with the greased poles. I was in Philadelphia when they won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles. Unfortunately, I was in Children's Hospital, Philadelphia with my son, but like I had a view out to the road after they won the Super Bowl. You literally saw emergency workers with just greasing the poles. It's insane. Eagles fans suck. Sorry, Steve. Anyway, Nico Hischier out tonight. Devils going Hughes, Bratt, Palat, Meyer, Nason, Mercer. Tortorella said there's some sickness and some kinks going through their lineup. So you read between the lines there. Most coach speak, you're like, oh, maybe it's going to be a different six defenseman or like a fourth liner. With Torts, it could be literally anything. And I don't really know who's hurt or whatever. I will say if Cates, Forrester, and Brink are all healthy, I'm fairly confident they'll be together. But after that, your guess is as good as mine. And it's not as bad of a spot as it appears with no Jacob Markstrom, no Nico Hischier. The Flyers can dictate matchups here. I do worry about whoever sees some of the Siegenthaler pairing. But even like when they're at home, they only play 16, 17 minutes. So like Torts can get them away, can get a top line away from them, especially because like if Cates, Forrester, Brink together, they're going to go out against that Hughes line. So I don't mind like a Konechny one-off, a Tippett one-off, a Mitchkoff one-off. It's just hard to know until we see definitive lines what is going on. Because if it's not Konechny, Tippett, Frost, and it's some weird combo, not only would that suck, but I don't trust that it will stay together, right? So like if you see like Couturier, Tippett, Lawton, right? And then like Konechny, Frost, Mitchkoff. I have no faith that they'll stick together. So I don't think I'd full stack anything besides Case, Forrester, Brink. One off Konechny, one off Tippett, one off Mitchkoff is fine. Hughes and Bratt have had a pretty large sample this season. They're fine. Like they're really good offensively. Defensively, they're kind of meh. And then you take Nico Hischier off that line with Meyer and Nason, you put in Dawson Mercer. It's not going to be the same defensive line. So I don't mind some Flyers one-offs here. I don't think I'd full stack anything. You can use like Cates, Forrester, Brink, like a two-man of those guys if you're power play stacking somewhere else. But I just don't think you should ignore the Flyers here because it's a perceived tough matchup and it's 5 games. The Devils side is a little bit more interesting. And Hughes, Bratt, Palat, 17,900, 16.7% top twos, 12.9% projected ownership. Now, the Flyers are healthy as far as we know. Someone could be sick. Someone could be dinged up. Hopefully it's not on the blue line. We have to wait and see there as well because when they're healthy, they are a very good defensive team. And that really shows. It's so funny because they're in the, I think, expected goal share per 60. They're like in the top 8 of the NHL. It's their goaltending that has completely just let them down. So I don't know if I want to play a 13% line that's relying on bad goaltending, right? I don't mind them because it's a good power play spot. The Flyers penalty kill sucks. But, Nico Hischier's out, and it's probably going to be Dawson Mercer taking his spot on the top power play. Nico Hischier is a very important part of that power play, so I don't know how it's going to react without Nico Hischier. Obviously, it's not going to be as good But if I was going to play a line, it would be Hughes, Bratt, Palat. Even if Mercer is on the top power play unit, that second line is going to get 2 guys on the top power play unit. But like, I just don't want to play a Dawson Mercer line. He'll probably play 17, 18 minutes. So from that standpoint, it's fine. It's just like that Cates line is very good defensively. If Konechny, Tippett, Frost are together, they've been good defensively. Even the Mitchkov, Couturier, Farabee line has been decent defensively. So it's not as great of a matchup as it appears. The only thing that you worry about is Urson just completely blowing up. And so for that reason, I would have interest in Hughes, Bratt, Palat.
Yeah, I'll start on the Philly side. It's kind of interesting. Like, if you look at a lot of the numbers behind the two New Jersey goalies, Jacob Markstrom, who's injured, Jake Allen, who's going to get the start. Like, Markstrom has been the better goalie overall, but if you look at where the difference has been on the penalty kill. Markstrom has been excellent when his team's been on the penalty kill. Jake Allen, much less so. In fact, at even strength, you could make an argument Jake Allen's been a better goalie than Markstrom this year. Now, it's a half season. I think Allen's only played like 16 or 17 games or something like that, a little over a half season. So it's not, a whole lot to go off. I just found it interesting that the Flyers don't have a good power play. Even their current power play iteration it's better than it's been, and it's still below average. But you could say it's not a bad power play spot, especially, with the New Jersey injuries that they have, particularly in goal. I'm going to assume, like, one thing I'm getting tired of is coaches being like, yeah, we have an illness going through the room. We really don't know what our lineup's going to look like tonight. And it's like the 6th defenseman is getting scratched. You know what I mean? It's like he's like, coaches, like, he's going to say, like, there's an illness running through the room, and then Garnet Hathaway is a game time scratch or something like that. It's until I'm just going to assume everyone's healthy and the lineups are normal. Like, Konechny, Tippett, and Frost have not been that good together this year. I mean, they have been, but they haven't been. They're shooting almost 20% as a line, which is preposterous. Like, half that would be pretty high, especially for a Flyers team. So I'm not buying into their 4.7 goals per 60. I'm buying more into the fact they're only generating 53 shot attempts per 60 minutes. Travis Konechny only has 34 shots over his last 20 games, under 2 shots per game for a quarter of the season. A lot of that has been in this current configuration or something similar to it. He's not really shooting a lot. He's still putting up a point per game over those 20 games, but it's a lot of assists. And, like, if you're a point per game player with a lot of assists and not a lot of shots, like you're Robert Thomas, you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't really move the needle a whole lot for me. I'm okay with Philly 1 here. For the big reason that New Jersey just has, injuries up front, injuries in goal. That Philly line's not coming in with much ownership. Like, I know we don't like Tortorella, and he might change lines, and et cetera, et cetera. This is still a fully correlated top line where all 3 forwards are going to likely play between 17 and 20 minutes, and they're coming in at 5% ownership at home against a backup goalie. You know what I mean? Like, at a certain point, I think people are just kind of avoiding the Flyers too much for their own good. Like, I would rather play Philly 1 than Detroit 1 here tonight. I can tell you that much. Yeah, so I don't mind the Flyers top line here. Like, they're not my favorite line on the slate or anything like that, but considering this is a perfectly correlated line at home against a backup goalie on a 5-game slate where all the forwards are probably going to play between 17 and 20 minutes, the fact that they're only 5% owned is, I think, kind of nuts. So I do like Philly 1. If you want to go to that Cates, Forster, Brink line, I think that's fine. I would probably prefer a 2-man. Like, Bobby Brink is basically a shot per game over his last 20 games. Like, he's not shooting a lot. Tyson Forster doesn't shoot a lot. It would be like Cates and then one of the wingers, so like Cates and Forster or Cates and Brink. I don't think I would stack all 3. Kind of the same thing with that Mitchkov, Couturier, Farabee line. I think I would do like a Mitchkov plus Couturier or a Mitchkov plus Farabee. I don't think I would stack all 3. If I'm 3-man stacking a line, it's Philly 1. Other than that, it's 2-mans from the depth. I'm not super excited about playing Philly tonight, but I also think that the ownership is a little bit disrespectful. I get it. It's a 2.6 total. But like I said, at the same time, this is a perfectly correlated line at home against a backup goalie and they're going to get good minutes. So, that is what it is. On the New Jersey side, like Hughes, Brad, and Platt is kind of interesting to me because that Brink Cates Forster line, since they got moved to a shutdown role basically like a month ago, their numbers have really taken a dive. And I don't think that's a huge surprise. I like Tyson Forster. He's going to be a good NHLer for a long time. I like Noah Cates. He's been an underrated NHLer for a long time. I don't think that they're suitable for shutdown roles. Now, that New Jersey top line hasn't been that great since Christmas. 2.7 goals, 3 actual goals per 60. But you get 2 guys on top power play unit. Brad and Hughes are almost, without Hischier in the lineup, are almost certainly going to play over 20 minutes here tonight. And the Flyers penalty kill is on an upswing, but has generally not been anywhere near as good as it was last year. Losing Hischier off the power play sucks, but he's not the key guy on that power play. You know what I mean? It's Hughes, Hamilton, and Bratt that really move the puck around. So I don't mind New Jersey 1 here. I would prefer them over Philly for sure. They do have, the higher top 2 stack. They do have the 3rd highest top 2 stack on the night at 16.7%. So I do like them. I'd rather play the New Jersey side than the Philly side. I'll say that much. Meyer, Nason, Mercer is kind of interesting because Mercer and Meyer have played, depth minutes without Hischier and Hughes. Like they have played on the 3rd line with, Eric Holla or Paul Cotter or what have you. And they've generated pretty well going up against depth matchups. 74 shot attempts, 5 expected goals per 60 minutes and 60 minutes together. Now, they're not going to put up 5 expected goals over the long term, but can they be like 3 expected goals? Yeah, maybe. And Mercer and Nason, Nason will be on the top power play. We do think Mercer's going to be there. I think Mercer's going to play over 20 minutes, let alone 18. So they're going to get a lot of ice time, and they're not getting a lot of ownership. About 6% ownership, 14.3K. If you need a cheaper line, I'm perfectly fine with New Jersey 2. So I think I would go New Jersey 1, New Jersey 2, Philly 1 in that order in this game. And I do think that the Flyers are getting a little bit disrespected here.
Yeah, especially without Markstrom and Nico Hischier. It's like, okay. But anyway, let's get on to this game sucks. Vancouver Canucks with a 2.5 total heading into St. Louis. The Blues have a 2.8. And guess what? This game sucks. The total is 5.5. The under is getting hammered. If I was a betting man, I'd bet the under here. I am a betting man, but I don't really bet team totals and stuff. But Vancouver going Besser, Miller, Heinen, Garland, DeBrusk, Suter, Pedersen, Carlson, Hoglander. Blues going Kyrou, Holloway, Shen, Thomas Buchnevich, Neighbors. So I don't particularly love the Vancouver side, and it's not really a surprise. I will say in a smallish sample, Miller, Besser, Heinen have been pretty good. It is a really small sample, though. But generally speaking, Miller, Besser can lift anyone now. Miller looked awful when he came back. He's starting to look a little bit better. The problem is, right, the Blues send out Shen, Kyrou, Holloway for a lot of the shutdown matchups, and they've been really good this season. And that Vancouver line is coming in at 5%, right? If I'm going to play a 5% line in a 2.5 total, I'm just going to go play the Flyers.
Yeah.
So I'm out on Besser and Miller and Heinen here. Like, I don't know, man. Like, you want to one-off Garland or something. You want to one-off, Elias Pettersson and hope he, kicks it back. But again, I just don't like the Canucks here. The Blues have generally been decent defensively. Binnington's had a decent season. The one thing that I will say is the Blues' penalty kill sucks, but they don't take a lot of penalties. And it's not like Vancouver's power play has been anything to fear. So, I'm pretty much out on Vancouver here. I just don't like them. I'd much rather go play the Flyers in a similar total at home. The Kings road total is 2.9. It's not much higher than Vancouver's. I much prefer them. Even Detroit one might even be more playable than Vancouver here. If you want to take a stab, because they're 12,900 and they're almost like a filler, fine. But in my single entry, you're not going to see me have any Canucks. The Blues side is a little bit more interesting because, one, when the Blues send out Holloway, Shen, Kyrou against top comp, like that's going to be Miller and Besser. And they haven't been great defensively this season, especially lately. So I don't mind them at 15.5. They're coming in right at their top 2 stack at like 11 and change %. I don't love it because offensively they've kind of plateaued a little bit. And here's the kicker. Thomas Buchnevich Neighbors is probably going to get a lot of that Pettersson line, and that Pettersson line has been brutal. It doesn't matter who Pettersson's with, really. They haven't been great defensively. Now, the thing that sucks is, Neighbors is on one unit and Buchnevich and Thomas are on the other, but like the Blues power play sucks. Both units suck. And this line, 13,800, is coming in the 3.9% top 2 stack, 3.2% projected ownership. It looks like it's going to be Lankinen in that, and that actually kind of sucks because actually we don't have a confirm yet. We'll see when they probably haven't even skated yet. So we'll have to wait and see on the goalie confirm. But I prefer Thomas Buchnevich Neighbors at like a fourth of the ownership compared to Kyrou, Holloway, Shen. They get better 5-on-5 matchups. They play generally around the same minutes. Thomas might get more minutes than anyone else. So for me, it would be Thomas Buchnevich Neighbors. I'm fine with Kyrou, Holloway, Shen, but at 11.3% ownership, I'd rather go elsewhere.
So I'll start on the Vancouver side. I think the case for Miller, Heinen, and Besser is, as you mentioned, they're 12.9K, right? They're a filler stack. And, Brock Besser certainly hasn't looked his best lately. Still around 2 shots per game over his last 20 games. Miller is inconsistent, but he still has good games. I think Dan Heinen's kind of underrated. They're okay because they're a filler. If they were 59, I would just say absolutely not. But it's the fact that they're basically a filler stack. You can put them in, if you're playing like New Jersey power play, we'll get to Edmonton in a second, Pittsburgh later in the slate, like those types of things. Like if you do need a cheap stack, I think they're fine. I'm not playing the Pettersson line. He for like 3 years, he was one of the most efficient players in the NHL. And it's well known that he's had knee tendonitis that kind of flared up around the All-Star break last year. Earlier, I was looking at what he's done basically in the last calendar year. So his last 75 games, he's at 1.86 points per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. That's the same point rate as Jordan Martinook. And it's lower than Jordan Staal. In fact, his shots per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 is also lower than Jordan Staal. Like for the last calendar year at 5-on-5, Elias Pettersson has been a slightly worse version of Jordan Staal. And it's not like it's just a lot of bad luck. Like we said, it's very well known that he was fighting a knee injury in the second half of last year, that he had to change his training and didn't have his normal training all summer because of it. We've talked about his skating metrics being down. He's still extremely talented, and he'll still get decent minutes, and he can still score. But there's a big difference between 35-goal, 90-point Elias Pettersson and 20-goal, 55-point Elias Pettersson, which is basically what he's been for like a year. So I'm out on him. It'd be the Miller line. Like Garland, DeBrusque, Suter, like I guess it's fine, but they're only $1,400 cheaper than Besser, Miller, Heinen. I'd just rather go play the Besser line. So, that Besser, Miller, Heinen line, Heinen and Miller together this year, 53 shot attempts, 3.3 goals. per 60 minutes, shooting 12.4%. It's a little high. Like, they can score. I'm not super worried about St. Louis. Just because they're a filler, I think that Miller line's in play, but I'm not like going out of my way to play them here tonight. For me, this is more on the St. Louis side. St. Louis won 15,500 at 11.1% top two stack, basically the same ownership. I call them St. Louis one. They're not technically the top line, but I do think they're their best line. But the Kyrou, Holloway, Shen line, I was looking to see, again, if they've been sliding. Their last 10 games, 64 shot attempts per 60, 2.9 expected goals, 3.8 actual goals. They're still scoring. They're still generating. They're going to have bad games once in a while. But I think importantly for them is that power play, Shen, Holloway, Kyrou, has Jake Neighbors on it. And that power play has actually been good for St. Louis, which is something that they've really struggled with this year, is having some consistent, like a consistently good power play. Like, that unit is up near 20 minutes together. It's not a huge sample, like 20 minutes splitting power play time with the way that they draw power plays. We're looking at like maybe like 15 games or something like that. But still, 143 shot attempts, 62 shots per 60 minutes on the power play for that power play unit. It's not like Vancouver has a bad penalty kill, but the fact that it is a perfectly correlated line on a power play that's actually been good brings my interest to Kyrou, Holloway, Shen. So 15,500. I think they're very much in play. I would rather play them than Philly. I would rather play them than Detroit. I still would probably rather play New Jersey, but that St. Louis Kyrou line is near the top of the list for that mid-price range for me. Thomas Buchnevich, Neighbors, haven't been able to find the same chemistry that they've shown in prior seasons. Thomas and Buchnevich so far this season outshot, shot attempts in the negatives by shared, like under 50% by expected goals. Pavel Buchnevich has 22 shots in his last 15 games, 1.5 shots per game. It's not a big shooter anyways, but there's a big difference between like shooting like 2.3 to 2.5 and like 1.5. That's Elias Pettersson territory now. So I think I would go to Kyrou, Holloway, Shen. That's my favorite line in this game, and it's not particularly close, and it's the highest by top two stacks. If you want to go to that Thomas Buchnevich Neighbors line because they are cheaper, Thomas Buchnevich still get good minutes, I think that's fine. I have nothing against him personally, but it's the Kyrou line I like best.
Fair. And we're just about to talk to that Edmonton game, and someone just tagged me in our Discord. Connor McDavid makes his return following a 3-game suspension tonight on a line with Draisaitl and Hyman this morning.
Yep.
Whoa, baby. All right, let's talk about said game here. Seattle Kraken with a 2.4 total heading into Edmonton. The Oilers have a 3.7. So let me see if I can do some quick math for you.
23,700.
Thank you. See, I could do that. Cliff, you already do it. I would guess that means Nugent Hopkins is going to be centering Arvidsson and Podkolzin.
I think it was Adam Henrique.
Jesus Christ. Okay. I mean, that's fine. When McDavid and Draisaitl are together, I don't have interest in the depth.
Yeah, and honestly, the way Nuge is playing, I don't think there's a huge difference between Henrique and Nugent Hopkins anymore anyway. It's just ice time and line mates.
Yeah, Henrique arguably is playing better, if we're being honest with ourselves. Here's the thing. Seattle has a pretty bad penalty kill. They don't take a ton of penalties, and Edmonton doesn't draw a lot of penalties. However, McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman historically have been nitrous, and Beniers, Schwartz, Kakko have slowed down on both ends of the ice.
And also, just real quick, I'll mention they play so many minutes, the Edmonton top line, that they match up against everybody.
Yeah. I mean, they'll still see a fair share of their Beniers line, which has definitely started leaking defensively. Chandler Stevenson line, doesn't matter who he's with, they suck. Wright, McCann, Tolvanen, since Bjorkstrand and McCann's flopped, they've been not great defensively. So obviously Edmonton won vaults to probably and I say probably, I mean like 98%. My favorite line of the night. The price is still like $3,100 cheaper than Tampa won at its peak. You know what I mean? They're fully correlated. You know they're going to play their minutes. This is a front end of a back-to-back for Seattle. They're at home tomorrow, and I don't know if the coach has plans to start Decord at home or something. There is a chance, albeit a small one, that it could be Philip Grubauer in it tonight. So that would be a scene. But I'm interested in McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman. They'll probably come in, 20, 25. Like the line we have in top stacks is McDavid, Hyman, Nugent Hopkins at 19.7, and they were getting 25% projected ownership. The Draisaitl, Arvidsson, Podkolzin line was getting 14% ownership. I would imagine a lot of that Draisaitl ownership carries. So you probably are going to see them 30% plus, but like whatever. There's plenty of ways to get different. So I do really like Edmonton 1. It would be the only line that I like on the Edmonton side. On the Seattle side, they have the lowest total on the slate. Edmonton's generally been decent defensively. They've had goalie issues at times. If anything, I would go to Kakko, Beniers, Schwartz, but that's really about it. And that's more of an MME type deal. So Edmonton 1, anywhere, anytime, any place, or Seattle 1 and MME.
Yeah, I mean, Edmonton's, the old Edmonton line with Nugent Hopkins instead of Draisaitl was at the top of the top two stacks here tonight at 30.9%. Like with Draisaitl, honestly, that'll probably push 40. They are the clear top line of the night. Now, 23,700, it's not as bad as it could be. I mean, think about, the 25K plus Colorado and Tampa Bay lines that we've seen this year. Here's the thing, like you talk about how good they are at 5-on-5. I was looking over the last two seasons, McDavid, Draisaitl, and Hyman have played 475 minutes, just under 475 minutes together, 5-on-5. 5.7 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. That's to put it into context, just how absolutely preposterous that goal scoring rate is. That is higher than the Flyers power play and is higher than the Anaheim Ducks power play over that same stretch. So this Edmonton line is better than the Anaheim power play at 5-on-5. So that's how good they are. And you're right about Seattle's top line leaking defensively. Their last 10 games, 135 minutes for Seattle's top line, 3 expected goals against, 66 shot attempts against per 60. And now they get a returning Connor McDavid, who should be a little bit rested with what is, the best top line in hockey whenever they're put together. Seems like a pretty good spot for Edmonton 1. But it is a good power play spot as well. And I want to mention that one, because with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins down on the third line, even though he's on the top power play, I don't think he gets a ton of ownership, like certainly nowhere close to like Hyman or Draisaitl or something like that. The other thing is, and I'll give myself a little shout out here. I'm writing about it for my newsletter, which comes out every Tuesday morning. You can go to my Twitter feed and subscribe through there. But I write about the Edmonton power play and what's changed. If you look at the Edmonton power play earlier in the season, they were struggling. Like they were flat out bad earlier in the season, like through the first 6 weeks. And I was looking at where they're shooting from, and Zach Hyman was taking a lot of shots from where you would expect guys to, like Patrick Laine shots, you know what I mean? Like from the circles, or like even Leon Draisaitl from time to time. He wasn't taking a lot from the front of the net. And since he came back on December 5th, he's been taking a lot of shots from directly in front of the net. And I think what that's done is open up. I mean, he's scoring more, but it's also opening up passing lanes for other guys, and they're scoring more as well. Like they've started to look more like the power play from the last couple of years rather than the first 6 weeks of the season. So I do think Edmonton's power play changes are very notable here, because the Seattle penalty kill is legitimately one of the worst in the NHL. Now, they don't take a lot of penalties, which does save them. But Seattle's PK, it's something like 23rd by penalty kill percentage on the season as a whole. over the last 5 weeks, second most goals against per 60 minutes when down a man. So this is a really good power play spot for Edmonton. Considering they're only 23, I say only 23-7, but they're not like 26K. I would probably add Ryan Nugent-Hopkins to the stack. You know what I mean? And hope that the power play can really do some damage here tonight. I probably wouldn't just stack Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman. Now, I think there's also a case for fading Edmonton. Like if Decord gets a start, he's a really good goalie. Seattle might only give up 1 or 2 power plays against, right? So I do think there is a case here that, Seattle grinds out a 2-1 win or a 3-2 win or something like that, and fading Edmonton is fine. But Edmonton 1 is the clear top line on the board. I would probably add Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. I think that's what I like best. On the Seattle side, it's not a whole lot that really interests me. I'm out on Stevenson, Burakovsky, Bjorkstrand. I honestly cannot believe that line is still together. I get that. I mean, they're outscoring the opposition at 5-on-5. They're also doing it by shooting 14%, which is not sustainable. So, once that corrects itself, I think they're going to be kind of cooked. McCann and Wright just have been kind of oil and water here together this season. Like, they just don't play well whenever they've been together. So I'm kind of out on them. So I agree with you. I think it's Schwartz, Kakko, and Beniers I go to. Like, whatever struggles they're having defensively, they've still been above average by shot attempts over the last 10 games, above average by goal scoring over their last 10 games. They're skating between 18 and 21 minutes over their last 5. So they're getting a lot of ice time. Like, the fourth line for Seattle is not getting much ice time anymore. And some of those minutes are going on the top line. I think Seattle 1 is perfectly fine, 13,100. The thing is that Kings Fiala line, higher owned, but they're only $700 more expensive. The Thomas Buchnevich Neighbors line is only $700 more expensive, and I'd definitely rather play those 2 lines in Seattle. But I think Seattle's okay. But this is an Edmonton game through and through.
Yeah. It's always on a short slate when you're just like, oh, by the way, we're going to put Draisaitl with McDavid, because if the lines were status quo, I was going to say you probably should add Draisaitl into your stack. And that kind of is the same sentiment with Nugent Hopkins. If those top 3 guys are 30% plus, you're going to get Nugent Hopkins at 9. So just keep that in the back of your noodle. Let's talk about this late night hammer that is going to be an absolute circus. Pittsburgh Penguins with a 3.6 total heading into San Jose. The Sharks have a 2.9. Now, I haven't seen anything on Brian Rust. I think they probably are going to skate in the next hour or so, hopefully. But as it stands, Pittsburgh, Crosby, Raquel, Beauvillier, Malkin, Bunting, Glass. That is a lovely top 6, if I may say so myself. Crosby, Raquel, Beauvillier, 17,200, 27.6% projected ownership. That was me throwing up in my mouth a little bit. No, actually, I was just coughing. But I don't know, man. Can you stomach a 28% Anthony Beauvillier if he's there tonight?
Honestly, probably not. But here's the thing. It's the San Jose Sharks.
It is the San Jose.
If this was literally one of 29 other teams, I would be no, absolutely not. But it's still the San Jose Sharks.
So Quick Party says Malcolm got hurt last game and Puljujarvi might be getting recalled. This is definitely, we have to see what's going on at morning skate, right? Because
I'm assuming Malkin is out.
Yeah. We have to see if Rust is in or out. It doesn't really change much defensively for Pittsburgh, but offensively, Rust being there would obviously change some things. I don't really want to play Beauvillier here. But again, the Celebrini, Toffoli, Eklund line, who gets those matchups, arguably are their best defensive line, and they have 3 expected goals against per 60, 4.7 actual. Kind of hoping Askarov gets the start. I know he hasn't been great recently, but he's still better than Georgiev. These guys just don't get heavy minutes, but at 17-2 with Beauvillier there, it's fine. I don't know, man. Like if Rust is in, it's kind of the pivot off of Edmonton, right? Because I feel like if Rust is in, less ownership's going to be on that top line because more people are just going to go play Edmonton. So like from that standpoint, I don't mind Pittsburgh, but if it's Beauvillier, like they're going to be super chalky and it's a great spot. It's a great power play spot. And honestly, like with Grzelcyk and Bunting on the top power play unit, it's improved to the point where like they're fine. They're not great. They're not awful. And they're if you have a league average power play against the Sharks penalty kill, you're probably going to score.
Yeah, but I think with Rust out, they moved Chris Letang into the spot. So 3 forward, 2 defensemen. I mean, they're still okay, but
I just as you can kind of hear in my voice, I am very apprehensive about playing Pittsburgh here at that ownership. Like when have we've never seen Pittsburgh chalk fail. You know what I mean? I want to see morning skate. If it is Beauvillier there, I'm more likely to fade them than play them. Obviously, they're a great play at 17,200. The Sharks are an atrocious defensive franchise. You could just take out defensive, and that sentence still holds water. If Rust is there, I think they're an interesting pivot away from Edmonton. That would be the only line. Like I have no interest in the depth of Pittsburgh. Obviously, a one-off Bunting is fine. I think that's probably the most likely thing I would do on a Pittsburgh side, whether it's Beauvillier or Rust, is just one-off Bunting and hope, he shoots, which he has been doing. So again, on the Pittsburgh side, I'm more likely to play them as a pivot off Edmonton if Rust is there. If it is Beauvillier, I get the play. It's an elite matchup. That ownership is crazy for Beauvillier. Honestly, if it is Beauvillier, I prefer the Shark side. Celebrini, Toffoli, Eklund, $1,000 less, 12% projected ownership less. The top 2 stack is less, but they still have a 16% top 2 stack. It's not like Pittsburgh's anything good defensively. Their penalty kill has taken a slide. Their goaltending isn't great. Since Wallman and Celebrini and Toffoli are on the top power play unit, they've been decent. So honestly, I'd rather eat the Celebrini, Toffoli, Eklund ownership at 16,200 at 16% than I would Crosby, Raquel, Beauvillier at 28%. It's just, you can call me a Shark slappy, and maybe I am, but I do really like this line offensively. That's really about it. Like, I don't mind Granlund, Zetterlund, Smith as a filler, but like, if we're going to play fillers on the Sharks, what are we even doing here? And like the Fiala line isn't much more expensive than that Granlund line. So it would be both top lines here. Pittsburgh is a choice you're going to have to make. And I want to see if Rust is at least skating, because that would make my choice a little bit easier.
Yeah. I'll start on the Pittsburgh side. Like, I am not a fan of all the Anthony Beauvillier ownership. If you look at just individual player ownership here tonight, number 1 is Sidney Crosby. Number 2 is Connor McDavid. Number 3 is Anthony Beauvillier. It's like, this is a slate with 10 teams on it, and Anthony Beauvillier is the 3rd highest projected owned player. It's get the 3
Dragon meme.
Like, exactly. Beauvillier, the goofy dragon. I get the play. Don't get me wrong. San Jose's bad. Like, it's not like San Jose has like a competent shutdown line they can use, and then they have bad even strength lines besides that. You know what I mean? I think like one team I kind of think about in that sense is, well, we just talked about Seattle. Like, until recently, the Beniers-Schwartz line was a pretty good shutdown line, and then the rest of their lines were kind of leaky defensively. It's not the case with San Jose. Every one of their lines sucked defensively. So, like, I understand. And, like, they have a bad penalty kill on the season, bottom 10 by penalty kill percentage over the last 5 weeks. most shot attempts against on the penalty kill, most shots against on the penalty kill, third most goals against on the penalty kill per minute. So whether you're looking at the whole season or just the last 5 weeks, like these guys are bad. I don't think Chris Letang's going to make the Pittsburgh power play that much better, but it is a good power play spot. I get playing Pittsburgh here. I don't think I would just play the top line. I would certainly add in one of the defensemen, if not 2 defensemen, honestly. Like between Grzelcyk and Letang and maybe even Carlson, I would probably go 3 forwards, 2 defensemen in my lineup, or at least 3 forwards, 1 defenseman. They are a good play. They have the second highest top 2 stack on the board here tonight for a reason. I'm not going to discount not playing Pittsburgh. I have a real hard time playing Anthony Beauvillier as the third highest owned player on the slate. They have been good with Beauvillier there. We have to say that. Raquel Crosby, Beauvillier, 74 shot attempts, 3.1 expected goals, 3.2 actual goals per 60 in 95 minutes together. So, like, they have been good. They're not elite, but they get good ice time. It's a good power play. I have no issue playing Pittsburgh. I typically don't play lines that are coming in 25, 30% owned on a slate like this, but I understand people wanting to play them. The line I want to shout out is the third line for Pittsburgh. Hayes, O'Connor, Tomasino. Kind of quietly, Hayes and Drew O'Connor have been fairly dominant down on the third line this season. 110 minutes together, 66 shot attempts per 60, 32 shots per 60, 3.4 expected goals per 60 at 5-on-5. That line of Tomasino, O'Connor, and Hayes is 8,500. Edmonton, we talked about how they're not 26K or whatever, but they're still really expensive, especially if you start throwing in Bouchard or whatever. I think that Pittsburgh third line, considering the matchups on the Shark side, is one of those cheap third lines you can use if you're power play stacking or doing something with the expensive Edmonton guys here tonight. But that's the only situation I would use them. In general, I agree. Like, I kind of like the San Jose side more. Like, San Jose's top power play with Granlund, Wallman, and Celebrini on the ice, 140 shot attempts, 81 shots, and 10 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Those are like Colorado last year type numbers on the power play. And you said it, the Pittsburgh penalty kill, not that great. I really like Celebrini, Toffoli, and Eklund here. About 16% top 2 stack, about 16% ownership. I think that's all just fine. I'd rather play them than Detroit. I'd rather play them than Philly. Probably right there neck and neck with me with New Jersey, but that is one of the lines that I would play. I think I would consider a power play stack here just because Granlund typically plays so many minutes. He plays with the empty net. He plays on the power play. He's one of those guys I don't want to leave off, especially where he's not super expensive. He's only 5,400. You know what I mean? Like, he gets involved in a lot of goals, even though he's not on a correlated power play line. So I would probably just power play stack, but I think the Celebrini line is my favorite line in this game, considering all the high ownership on Pittsburgh, but I understand wanting to play Pittsburgh one here.
Yeah. That's good. This game's going to be funky no matter what. No matter what you choose, it's going to be a scene. But let's talk about some defensemen here. There's only 3 guys 6K or above: Hughes, Bouchard, Wallman. I do like both Bouchard and Wallman. I think Quinn Hughes is fine. He has still been shooting the puck a decent amount. 131 shots in 44 games is just under 3 per game. Like, he's fine, but I prefer Bouchard and Wallman in the top range. After that, if I'm not playing Bouchard or Wallman, I'm definitely probably going to be under 4K here tonight, especially if you're trying to jam in Edmonton and this and that. So don't mind Bouchard and Wallman. Bunch of cheap guys that I like as well. What are you seeing?
Yeah, Bouchard, top projected defenseman on the board, even top point per dollar amongst the expensive defensemen, and it's not even close, really. So he's the top guy. I don't mind Hughes. I feel like it'd be chasing after his game on the weekend or last week, whatever, that 2-goal game. But it feels like if Vancouver piles in a few goals here tonight, obviously Hughes is probably going to have to get involved. But yeah, I do like Wallman as well, especially if you're playing San Jose. Certainly don't mind putting him in with San Jose stack. But yeah, Bouchard, the clear top play amongst the expensive guys. The mid-price range is honestly not that great. Like Letang, I mean, Letang's probably getting on the top power play. He's in a great matchup. He's fine. Same thing with like either Ekholm or Nurse. I usually lean Ekholm, but Nurse is shooting a lot this year, so I think that's fine. But like Brandon Montour's not getting a lot of minutes for Seattle. Dougie Hamilton doesn't get a ton of minutes. Colton Parayko, I think, is okay, but it's not necessarily a matchup where I think he's going to rack up shot blocks because Vancouver's a pretty low event team. So like Ekholm, Letang, Nurse, maybe Dougie Hamilton if you're playing New Jersey. That's about it. Amongst the cheap guys, like Jamie Drysdale's under 3K, getting top power play time. He's playable. And he was up to like 21. I think he's been over 20 minutes in 2 of his last 3 games. So he's getting more minutes to go with that power play time.
He got moved up to the top pair.
Yeah, so I think he's fine. Like Mario Ferraro is in a good spot to block some shots. He's okay if you need sub 3K. Same thing with Jonas Siegenthaler. Like Matt Grzelcyk, power play time, a little bit more expensive. He's fine. Jordan Spence, I think, is 3K. Top power play time, we assume. God knows if they're ever going to change that power play again. Luke Hughes, certainly don't mind the matchup going into Philly. Brett Kulak, he's fine for Edmonton at home. So like there are some cheap defensemen I like here tonight, whether you're looking, sub 3K or like 3,000 to 4,000, especially if you're playing like, the expensive Edmonton guys here.
Yeah. Let's talk about the goalies. We don't have a lot of goalie confirms. There's some. But in the top range, like I could tell you, I'm not super interested in GPPs anyway, in the Edmonton starter or the Pittsburgh starter. If you're playing cash and it's Stuart Skinner, like it's probably fine. But the guy in that top range, if Talbot is starting, he would probably be the guy. The Kings have shooting percentage issues. That's okay. Some people have performance issues, but that's why Cam Talbot for me, I'm in that top range. I don't mind Jordan Bennington at 7,900. Vancouver starter would be interesting for me. Even if it is Demko at 7,500, you take a stab and see if he can, replicate his previous seasons. Darcy Kemper, if it is Kemper. And then if you're going down, like cheap, if it is Askarov, I take a stab on him at 7,200. And if it is Decord, I take a stab at him at 7K.
Yeah, as far as Edmonton goes, they're saying Skinner was at the hospital. His wife had a baby, so congrats to them. I do wonder if they just give Skinner the night off then. I know Pickard just started on Thursday, I think, but he played well. And they don't have a back-to-back until the Four Nations Cup break, so it feels like another time to give Skinner a night off, and then Skinner plays like the next 5 games or 6 games or whatever it is. So I do think it's going to be Pickard, but we'll see. I don't like I don't like it from a shot volume perspective, but I think Jordan Binnington 7,900 for me is at or near the top of my list. Like obviously Calvin Pickard is probably going to end up the top projected goalie if he gets announced, just because Seattle's not a high scoring team. But considering Binnington 7,900, Vancouver's generally had trouble scoring. I don't mind Binnington here. Jake Allen is kind of interesting. He's the 3rd highest projected goalie that we have at Stokastic here tonight. 11.3 points at 7,600. I think that makes a lot of sense against Philly, especially where Philly typically doesn't score a lot of power play goals. So like they don't fill the net at 5-on-5. Jake Allen could have a pretty good night here tonight. And yeah, I do like Cam Talbot as well, assuming he gets to start. Actually, even if Alex Lyon gets to start, I don't mind. You know what I mean? Like, it's a good matchup against the Kings because Detroit's one big weakness is the penalty kill, and Los Angeles' one big weakness is the power play. So, like, if the Kings don't fill the net at 5-on-5, it's kind of that Vancouver situation. Like, I think, or that New Jersey situation, rather. I think Talbot would be fine tonight. So I don't mind Talbot at 8K if you're spending up him or Binnington. If I'm spending down a little ways, Jake Allen 7,600 makes a lot of sense. If you want to go all the way to Askarov, I think that's fine. It's not like Pittsburgh can score. They do put up goals, but it's not like Pittsburgh's immune to being, 1 goal on 32 shots or something like that. So I don't mind Askarov if you need the savings, as long as he starts. Yeah.
Yeah. We will for sure be back tomorrow and Thursday. Looks probable on Wednesday. We'll have to see on Friday what the GPPs look like. So the next few days we'll be with you. So make sure to stay tuned for that, especially with the large GPPs tomorrow. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. Philip Tomasino.
Damn. Was not expecting a Philly Tomasino there. I guess I have to replicate the spiciness. I don't have to, but I'm going to. Going Owen Tippett.
Rip it, and tip it. Let's see what he can do against New Jersey here.
Forecheck, back check, tro check. But we will be back tomorrow at our normal slot, 2 p.m. Eastern. Looking forward to break down that slate tomorrow for the Spinorama, and I'm sure FanDuel will have $5 the first or something. But we will see you guys tomorrow, and good luck tonight.
Good luck tonight, everyone.